If you're the type of ADHD woman who struggles with impulsivity and boredom, then this video is for you. By the end of this video, you'll have a better understanding of why so many ADHDers struggle with impulsivity. And then I will give you easy to implement ADHD-friendly tips to manage boredom so that you're no longer recklessly impulsive. And if you're late diagnosed with ADHD or you believe you have it, helping women with ADHD thrive is what I've dedicated my life to and what I love doing because I too have ADHD and I know exactly how difficult it can be to manage this condition when you don't have the right support in place. I'd love to get on a call with you. There's a link to book a call with me in the description of this video to see how I can support you. Let's begin with impulsivity, which can include making hasty decisions, acting without thinking about future consequences, and struggling with delayed gratification. As ADHDers, we have a 30 to 40% delay in our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for our executive functioning. Executive functioning includes self-regulation, decision-making, and impulse control. We also have really busy brains and lower levels of dopamine than neurotypical people do, so it's really the perfect storm to both being and acting impulsively because our brains crave it to avoid boredom. The problem in a nutshell is that there's no way for us to get dopamine when we're bored. Dopamine is that neurotransmitter associated with pleasure, reward, attention, but above all else, what we really get dopamine from is the anticipation of something occurring. So when our environment is not stimulating enough, individuals with ADHD may feel reckless, unfocused, and bored. And the very unhealthy and unusual unconscious way we deal with this is through impulsive acts, like spending too much money on the things we don't need or unconsciously looking for an argument. Yes, we can actually get a ton of dopamine from drama that we create. For example, even arguing with our spouse can give us dopamine. Here are a few of the connections between impulsivity and boredom. Seeking stimulation because we are chronically understimulated. Difficulty with delayed gratification, we tend to be really impatient. Task switching. We may quickly switch tasks when we feel bored, leading to impulsivity. We might even abandon a task midway to start something more interesting, often without completing the initial task and without consciously even knowing that we are doing that. Let me know in the comments if any of these things are landing for you so far. And finally, emotional regulation. Boredom can be really triggering to those of us who thrive off stimulation, which can further exacerbate impulsive behavior. So if boredom is one of the root causes to impulsivity, what can we as ADHDers proactively do to make sure that we stay stimulated? Before we get into these tips, if you are a woman struggling to manage your ADHD on your own, again, there's a link in the description of this video to book a call with me to see how I can support you. Tip number 1 is to create a boredom survival kit. This is a great way to plan for downtime. And it can look like having some of the crafts that you've purchased but haven't done yet in a designated spot for you to use whenever you start feeling antsy. Or it could be a book that you've been meaning to read. You could place these items in a tub and label it Boredom Survival Kit. Creating the habit of having a designated place you can go and find something to do could make managing random boredomness easier to handle. Tip number 2 is to break tasks you need to complete into smaller steps, especially the boring ones. Breaking tasks into smaller, more manageable steps can make us feel less overwhelmed and more engaged. And then completing these smaller tasks can provide a sense of accomplishment, which will inevitably keep us motivated. Tip number 3 is diet, exercise, as well as good sleep hygiene. A high-protein diet, exercise, please clear this with your doctor first, and good sleep hygiene all help you produce dopamine naturally, and the more dopamine you can produce naturally, the less chance you are going to get bored and then fall into impulsive acts. ADHD medication can help with this too. Talk to your doctor if that's something that you'd like to look into. Tip number 4 is to create a structured routine that works for you. We generally do really well when we have a plan of what our day and our week looks like. If you have a lot of time in between the things you need to get done and you know you struggle with boredom, consider an activity group or class like yoga or some sort of crafts class to fill holes in your schedule. The most successful ADHDers I know live and die by a structured schedule. It isn't sexy, but it works. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope that you learned something. Share this video with an ADHDer you love, and I will see you next week in the next video.